Okay, welcome to LCAR meeting, January 14th, 8 a.m. We have 7 out of 8 committee members with us and legislative council and operations staff. On the agenda today are simple agenda, the minutes of reviewing and approving the minutes of the last meeting, and then reviewing the administrative rules that under which we operate. I assume you've all had a chance to read the minutes of the last meeting. And if so, is there a motion to approve? You're muted.
So moved.
Thank you. You notice how I didn't even have to say who's muted? Okay. A motion to approve, hearing or seeing no other discussion. All those in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 And that was unanimous and none opposed. Next order of business is the rules under review. Ms. Dexter Cooper sent out a copy to everybody of the revisions so far. A few people responded, but Anthea, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So for the record, Anthea Dexter Cooper from the Office of Legislative Counsel. Mr. Chair, would you like me to start where we left off, which was, I believe, in the middle of Rule 5? Or would you like to start at the beginning and try and just work through and knock things off?
I think you can pick up where we left off.
Charlene has given me share access, so I'm going to put this up on the screen. So hopefully everyone can now see a Word document with track changes.
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And this is what I had sent out last week. And I have that we left off in the middle of Section 5, subsection A, and that there was a note to flag for the committee that you wanted to go back to discuss whether or not the complete final proposal shall include all written comments submitted to the agency. The change here is the elimination of the paper copies part of this sentence. You can see that on the second line of page 6, but the committee wanted to circle back on the filing of the written comments.
And are there committee comments, questions about this section? I think this discussion was around when copies of all written comments were appropriate versus responsiveness summaries.
Correct. One of the things that Betsy Ann and I did after the last meeting was we looked at the Secretary of State's rule on rulemaking to see if there was anything in there that specified when one should happen or another. Those rules don't even address the filing of the written comments with the complete final proposal, nor is it addressed in statute. So we think the direction you're going in for this rule is under the authority of Section 817B, and then also the fact that, you know, these are being filed with agencies, they're public records, which is sort of the basis for making the request. But yes, that was the committee's sort of point that they were at was, do we want all the written comments? Do we want summary charts, or the summary charts being provided sort of as a courtesy from the agencies, even though the rules don't specify that that's what they need to do. So that was sort of the crux of the conversation at the very, very end of the last meeting.
And I think my only concern about this is when we get a rule where we have 15 pages of essentially the same email, but sent by different people, and we are duly copied on each one. And that just seems a waste of everybody's time, effort, and materials when we could be notified that there were 15 responses stating this concern, which seems like it would be more efficient for everyone. Which is different than a responsiveness summary. That's a summary of the comments. Other folks' thoughts?
Oh, Mr. Chair, we're not here to be efficient. We're here to be responsible. We're here to listen, and we're here to take in what people want to share with us. So that's dictatorships. You get one piece of paper with all the names on it, but this is we're supposed to, I get frustrated when I get emails from 14 people about plastic bags, and they're all exactly the same. But that's part of what we do.
And good morning, Mr. Chair. Sorry that I arrived late.
Good morning, Mr. Senator.
Yes, came from another meeting. I'm learning to get back into the swim a little bit here.
We are at the top of page 6.
Great, thank you.
Discussing written comments, picking up the discussion of written comments versus responsiveness summary, or even just a comment summary, and efficiency versus thoroughness.
I'm trying to understand the difference between having one letter with identified as coming from multiple people as with having multiple letters from all those people. I mean, certainly if there's an indication in the record that there were 20 letters from the following people, and the letter was filed. So I'm not, it's not a, so I'm just, that's a question. I don't see anything wrong with having the list as long as the attribution for the individual letters is there.
I agree with Senator Lyons on that one. I think, one document with notification that this document was sent by 20 people, 25 people, however many people, rather than having this pile of documents. So that's my opinion on that one.
Senator Bray.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understand, and pardon me if I'm causing you to repeat something. Are we talking about, so when someone's using an email form and we literally get 20 documents that are the same letter, that's one thing, but it seems as though some of the responsiveness summaries we've seen, they summarize the rule writing agency summarizes the comments, and we're not seeing the original language from those who provided comments to the rule makers. And it's that second case that gives me a little concern, because those writing the rules, I'd rather hear from the people who had the complaints or concerns in their own original language, because it's more revealing sometimes than hearing an agency summarize what kind of remarks they got.
Could we say something like identical written comments can be combined, or can be combined with all individual contributors listed? Or are we wasting too much time here and should just keep going with as we have been? Representative Gardner.
Thank you. Former Representative Gardner now.
Yeah.
I agree with Senator Bray. I think something can be lost in the translation. I understand what you're saying about if they are truly identical, but sometimes, you know, the translation is in the eye of the beholder. So I think it's helpful sometimes to have all of these comments, who they are from, where they are from. I find that information very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I would say honorary representative Gardner
The honorary.
until 9 o'clock.
And you can become emeritus and an alumna and
Let representatives become the honorary. We don't get to maintain this as you guys do, senator. So
Oh,
forever after, we are the honorary Robin Chestnut Tangerman, etc.
unless I'm impeached. Okay, and thank you for adding that. We can circle back around, touch base on that on the final go through. You want to continue from here?
Okay. The next change, and I mentioned this in my email, not really a substantive change, the switching the order of the subsections of the section designations and including a hyperlink to them, but the balance of this subsection is staying virtually identical to the way that it is in your current rules. In subsection B, again, these are a lot of the changes that Betsy Ann said she was making throughout all of the rules, switching over from from legislative council, spelled CIL, to Office of Legislative Operations when it's covering the tasks that Charlene does, and capitalizing committee throughout, but no substantive changes in this subsection. Same with subsection C. I switch to Office of Legislative Operations. And now in subsection D at the top of page 7, this is the paragraph that's highlighted in yellow. This is a new concept to your rules. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put up on the screen what 3 VSA section 848 says. So 3 VSA 848 is addressing certain changes to the authority to make rules, either repeal by operation of law, that's in subsection A, with the 3 instances where there could be repeal by operation of law, the abolishment of the agency, the court of competent jurisdiction has declared the rule to be invalid, or the statutory authority is no longer in existence, whether it was declared invalid by a court or the General Assembly itself chose to repeal the statute that was giving the agency the authority to engage in the rulemaking. It also covers repeal for non-publication, which is not really sort of the crux of why we are proposing this addition to your rules. And then in subsection D, it's got the amendment of authority for rule, either transfer from one agency to another, or just a change to the statute that provides the rulemaking authority, and whether or not that's going to lead to the agency needing to make a change to the rule. You'll notice I skipped over subsection B. So what subsection B does is it indicates what sort of notice needs to be provided if there is a repeal by operation of law under subsection A. And it requires the agency that adopted the rule to notify the Secretary of State, and you notice it'll just say there, Secretary of State, in such manner as the Secretary may prescribe by rule or procedure, and the Secretary shall delete the rule from the published Code of Administrative Rules. That is different from the notice requirement in subsection D for the ones that are either the transfer of authority or the change, not the repeal by operation of law, which says that certain things, a copy of a written determination or notification, needs to be provided to the Secretary of State and to LCAR. So in one, the statute says you need to get notice, and in the other, it says the notice is just supposed to go to the Secretary of State. My understanding of what the Secretary of State's office is providing in terms of guidance when this happens is that in both instances, notification should go to LCAR in addition to the Secretary of State. So what subsection D is trying to capture is if an agency provides notice under 3 VSA section 848, what should then happen? So if notice is provided, then it needs to be done through an electronic submission to the Office of Legislative Operations staff. And then staff needs to promptly acknowledge receipt and distribute a copy of that notification to the chair and the vice chair. And then we're specifically specifying in this proposed rule that a submission shall not be treated as a request for action by LCAR. And in the instance of the repeals by operation of law under 848A, the one where the statute doesn't even say you need to get notice, the committee will not take action because there isn't really anything for you to do. At that point, the rule has been repealed by operation of law. This is more the process that gets the rule removed from the Secretaries of State's official compilation of the rules. So that's the reason why we're proposing this and sort of the possible scenarios where LCAR could be receiving notice in sort of this passive way of something that's sort of triggering under Section 848.
And this was prompted because we received a notice of a rule being rescinded or deleted.
Indeed.
And we're unsure of what that notice, whether that notice required action or not.
Exactly.
This is to clarify that no action is required.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Well, that sounds fine to me. I mean, all of us, basically all it's saying is we get the notice, it's a notice that we're not required to take action, and we don't take any action.
My favorite kind of notice.
That does seem helpful in keeping people in the loop.
Yep, I think that's good. Please carry on.
Okay, great. No changes to Section 6 aside from a capitalization of committees. In Section 7, this is time limitations. This is to reflect a change in how much time there is to do something in accordance with changes that were made to the APA back in 2018. And I believe this was something that Betsy Ann had touched upon a little bit throughout, with the fact that there were a number of these timelines that had been bumped out to provide for more time for an action to happen. And then in the rest of subsection A, there are some capitalizations and some streamlining of language, and in addition of a hyperlink.
Looks good.
That's, yeah.
The last ones are pretty straightforward in terms of the changes, in that there are no changes, just capitalization of committee throughout. And that's on the petitions referral to a standing committee, suspension of rules, and the amendment of rules, which you are doing as we speak.
Okay. And and 10 is reassuring in that if we get something wrong, LCAR can fix it at any time.
So I believe, in addition to there are a few changes that have been made since the last draft. I don't think any of them were things that the committee really needed to discuss. Some of them came from drafting ops, but I do know that the committee wanted to circle back on the subsection that had the changes to agenda making with regards to requests from members of the public and treating those differently. So I think that's the other outstanding conversation that the committee needed to have based on the guidance that Betsy Ann and I were given at the last meeting.
Right. When I was rereading it, my only question came up immediately was in subsection C, any business brought up under this section shall be pursued and investigated by a majority of the entire, a majority of the entire committee approves a further inquiry. And that covers both subsections A and B, correct?
It does.
So they're treated the same in terms of a majority of the committee needing to approve
Correct.
Okay.
The difference comes in the way in which the request comes before the committee, whereas in subsection B, the one that deals with the member of the general public, that's requiring that it be the filing of a written request and that it needs to be filed electronically with Office of Legislative Operations staff. So you're treating the start of the request differently, but the threshold for the committee to take it up is the same. It's the majority of the committee.
Yep. This section had generated some good debate the first time through. Other people have concerns, views?
Mhm.
Okay. Were there other areas to revisit, or was it largely that? And the section we just added today?
Yes, within the changes that have been made, there were some gender neutrality changes. So there's now the word he or she does not appear in the rules at all. One thing within this section on the agenda, you'll see the word individual is used here, and that's the only place where individual is used. I think you certainly could change this to person to be consistent with the rest of the uses of person throughout the rules. But this is a little thing that I always look for, where our statutes have person being more encompassing than just a human being. But since the definitions from the statutes are not really applicable here because these are standalone rules, this is just more a habit of mine to use individual than anything that needs to be done. So I will certainly not be offended if you say you want to use person instead of individual right there. This was the one instance where I thought you could very obviously identify that it only could be a human being because it's a member of staff, that's Charlene and me, or a member of LCAR. You are all human beings.
I have no problem with individual there.
I don't either.
Me either. Can I ask a question?
Yes,
on,
Senator Lyons.
On B, and forgive my, if I should know this. It says that the submission can be made to Ledge Council. Is there timing on this submission as there is for, just everything else, the 48, is there a 48-hour period? Is there a 24-hour period? Or is that something that comes out in, when Charlene puts together her informational packet? It seems to me we could get these things, at a minute to 8 in the morning before committee meeting.
I think if that were to happen, it would be the discretion of the chair and setting the agenda, which is in subsection D. Committee staff shall prepare an agenda for each meeting in consultation with the chair or vice chair. Just because a request is received at 7:59 a.m. on Thursday, the member of the general public has followed the rule that says it needs to be filed, assuming that they filed electronically. But it doesn't say in here that it will necessarily be taken up at the next meeting. If you wanted to include something with some sort of timing threshold saying that it won't be taken up at a meeting unless it's filed, 48 hours in advance. One of the things I think that's doing is it's binding the chair a little bit to need to do something at the next meeting. And maybe it's a very, very packed agenda. If they wanted to address a specific thing on the agenda comes out and there's sort of that other avenue. I think this is more to capture other general issues that someone would want the committee to take up, and there isn't already a vehicle for that to get before the committee.
Okay, I'm just thinking that, if we have a rule that we would need an extension for further information or consideration, if we could start getting all these additional pieces of information it's a conundrum for me. I don't know the answer.
Maybe take a little bit of solace in it's a conundrum that exists at present because you are not adding to the rules the fact that a member of the general public may bring up something new through this rule. That language is already there in subsection A of section 2, where on that first yellow highlighting, it says member of general public. You're just moving it to a new subsection and treating it differently. My understanding is that you are not getting lots of members of the general public that are bringing things to the committee's attention under this rule. So it could be that this is just not something that is taken advantage of frequently.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Right. So, Mr. Chair, may I ask a question here?
Senator Bray.
Yeah. So then if something arrives, whether it arrives a week ahead or at 7:59, the chair has discretion as to whether or not it can be taken up at that meeting. Is that the way we're leaving it? I just want to, we've talked about that, but I don't necessarily see quite how that flows. I mean, let me put my cards on the table. I'm happy to have the chair have that kind of discretion, because something that we would want to hear about could come up suddenly, and we wouldn't want to, I don't know that we'd want to prohibit that just because of timing. On the other hand, we don't want the chair to be able to run efficient meetings. So I'd be happy to leave it chair's discretion and not have a timing requirement.
I'm happy with it being chair's discretion as is current.
Right.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that gets us back to where we started, which is written comments.
And this is really just I think, a personal preference. I mean, I do think that having 15 comments printed out, 15 identical comments printed out, gives them a greater weight than having one comment with 15 names attached. So I think that's a legitimate concern. It was really just kind of, it was efficiency prompting this concern on my part. But it's not a it's not a hill I want to die on.
I just don't want to cut down any more trees.
Well, so here's a slightly fussy thing, I suppose. If it is different to get one letter with 15 signatures and 15 identical letters. So I don't know if this will distinguish between those two. I mean, sometimes in committee, we get a letter and it's signed by 12 different directors of regional planning commissions. So it might be worth somehow letting people know that you got 15 letters. I know I'm picking nits here, but it is a little different.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Senator McConnell.
We all get emails, and sometimes we get 6 people that each write us an individual letter on a subject, and they are generally the same opinion. And we have an impression of what we've read. And then the next day we'll get 6 emails that are identical, that have been sent by 6 different people. And when you contact them and ask them and wish to talk to them about their concerns as expressed to you, you know what happens. They go, well, oh, I didn't realize that, or someone sent that to me and I forwarded it to you, and I don't really understand the details, but you know what I'm talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's a reality of what we do, and each of us approaches that differently, or perhaps similarly on our own when we're dealing with constituents. And so that's what prompted my concern. 6 people send an identical text and it gets consolidated, perhaps when it's consolidated, there'll be a note on the bottom saying, these were each identical and appeared to be a form letter that was sent in, or not. You know, even that is, whatever you do is whatever we choose is not worth dying on the top of it. Yeah. But we all know that there are subtleties involved. Thank you.
I guess to get into the nuances, as Senator Bray was talking about, I appreciate the word may in there, because then an agency has the discretion to give us copies of each or to consolidate them. So I'm going to suggest that we keep that line unless there is opposition to it.
Mr. Chair, so that sounds good. I'm just curious, how did this actually come up? I mean, where does this suggestion arise from?
I believe that I brought it up in concern to, on the line 2, it says written comment, submitting copies of all written comments. Oh, this actually, before that, this was about, we were discussing written comments and responsiveness summaries, and whether responsiveness summaries were required. And that led into this discussion of receiving comments, copies of all written comments, and just my thought of consolidating when appropriate.
Got it. Thank you.
Is there further discussion, comment, questions, concerns?
No, let's leave it. It's good.
Okay. Any other comments or sections people want to revisit? Or do we have a completed document? Looks like we have a completed document, revised document, and so we have a motion to adopt this rule as revised.
Well, if somebody is going to do it, I'll do it. Or we could stay here all morning waiting for somebody else to make a motion.
This is like Vermonters at a 4-way stop. Everyone is so polite. They want someone else to go first.
Yeah, right. So I move that we approve the revised document on Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules.
Seeing no further, no comments or further discussion, all those in favor signify.
Do we need I think we should ask Representative, former Representative Gardner to second this.
I would be happy to, but do we need a second?
Probably not.
We don't, there is no second is needed, but it's a good idea, Ginny.
An honorary second.
It's an honorary second. I like that.
Thank you.
In that case, I will third it, and then all the honorary representatives have weighed in. So all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 Those opposed, raise your hand, nay. And you have adopted the rule revisions for LCAR review.
Linda, before you call for a motion for adjournment, I just need to ask Anthea. Anthea, did you get my paperwork on the filing of impeachment for Representatives Gardner, Myers, and Chestnut Tangerman?
I do not think I am the appropriate person to collect that filing. I would suggest you reach out to.
Anthea, can you take the document down and let us?
Let you see your
There we
face.
go.
Yeah. Okay, is there any other business for this committee?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we scheduled for a meeting? Do we have documents for next Monday or next Thursday? I think
There
the
are-
last I heard, the three of us who are exiting
Or not?
will, I heard that the speaker won't make that announcement until the beginning of February. So I'm just wondering if we do actually have enough for a meeting next week.
Charlene, yes, please.
Charlene,
We don't have any rules filed. So the next meeting, if we get any rules filed by the 19th of January, the next meeting will be February 4th.
then this is au revoir.
Oh,
Hmm,
Madam-
I
Mr.
suspect
Chair?
there's going to be one more alumni session here.
Senator McDonald.
I profess ignorance. I hadn't realized that there were three of us who were leaving. And I see Representative Myers nodding her head. Are you the third? Who's the
Yeah,
third?
there are three,
Yeah.
me
Okay,
and Robin.
Linda, you and I have served many years together. And when I have been chair or acting chair, and wasn't able to be there, you have always been the person that I've asked to sit in for your both knowledge and procedure and solid level-headed treatment of your colleagues on this committee. And while all three will be missed, you have established that you will be long remembered. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very
I don't
much.
know how well you've actually treated your other colleagues well, because I kept getting kicked under the table.
Joe, I
That was
can't,
to keep you,
I
that was to
can't-
keep you moving well.
I can't make a prediction on when that'll stop. But no one kicks back from under the table with more success than you do.
I think that's an obvious failing of Zoom. Is there isn't a kick under the table feature.
Right? You could
Oh.
deliver a mild electric shock through the other person's keyboard or something.
Well, so it appears that barring some unexpected reception of rulings, we will not be having a meeting next week. And the subsequent meeting will most likely be with a revised committee. So I want to thank you all, say it's been a real pleasure working with you all. And I appreciate the immense amount of effort, that extra effort that goes into serving on this committee in addition to all of the other duties of legislators.
Mr. Chair, thank you for your very good leadership and guidance as chair. And it's been very helpful and transparent. And you have brought added value to our work. So thank you very much. And we're going to miss you.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
And with
chip in
that,
one other comment to go along with the chairs. Thank you so much for serving. I would say of all the committees that are out there, special committees, this is one of the least visible to most others. And I actually think it's one of the most essential because so much of our work ends up in rule. So I'm really happy to be working with a group of thoughtful people who read through everything from soup to nuts carefully and help us make sure the rules are doing what we intended. So thanks for your
And
careful
yeah, I agree with
contribution.
you, Senator, but I don't want to forget Representative Gardner. Please, she has been highly effective in doing exactly what you said. She reads thoroughly and brings up the right question every time. So thank you, Marcia.
Thank you so much. It's just been a an honor and a pleasure to serve on this committee. And I certainly have learned a lot more than I knew already about state government.
Yeah.
Happy
And I don't
trails,
even,
guys.
I don't even remember how many years I have served on this committee, but it's certainly, Mark, I don't know, it has certainly been 12 or 14, maybe that
Ooh.
out of that, because I came on LCAR relatively early and since I've been 19 years, that's probably, 12 or 14, I think, yeah. And just keeping on trucking.
I don't think
Absolutely.
Yep.
I've never been to an LCAR meeting, even before I was on the committee, without you and Mark both there. So
Happy trails and best of luck in future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Too.
Did you make the motion, Linda?
I
Oh,
haven't,
yes,
but
and it
I
was
was just
seconded
getting
and
ready to.
thirded. Yes.
I
Um,
move that we depart the meeting.
All those in favor,
did-
raise your hand and wave.
Mr. Chair, I'm having a little brain fade here. Sorry. Did we end up having the vote on accepting the rule?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. I'm so excited. I can't keep it straight.
Let the record show I voted against adjourning. So.
Thank you. There's that consistency we're looking for. Okay.
All right.
Thank you all. And,
Be well.
Take care.
adjourn.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Happy trails.